Welcome to the Ordinary Marathoner Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Ordinary Marathoner Podcast. My name is Coach Scott. I'll be your host today. It is Wednesday, July 14th, and this is the Ironman Musselman 70.3 race recap for you. It was a successful day. Did make it to the finish line. Race plan went to perfection, I gotta say. We went in with a very conservative plan, as we talked about last week, and things were good. Things happened. Things went as planned, which doesn't always happen in a race like this, in a big race like this. But we're gonna get back to that in just a minute. There was a few things that I wanted to mention. I took some notes. So I wanted to mention. You go through these race recaps and you try to mention everything that you like, but sometimes you forget. So I didn't want that to happen. So I made some notes. We had one person from Team Ordinary doing a race over the weekend. Stu Wiener over on July 11th did the Narragansett Summer Running Festival half marathon. I think that he said it was his 44th half marathon. Awesome job, Stu. Way to get done. Good to see Stu out and about and getting busy, finishing a lot of races this year. Good to see. I also saw Mary O'Connell out there doing a race as well. It wasn't on the race calendar, but just wanted to congratulate her as well. Again, if you're a member of Team Ordinary, you want to put your races on your race schedule, so I mentioned them on the podcast. Go to teamordinary.com, look at the race calendar, the race schedule there, find the link to just add your race to the race schedule, and so I can mention it on the podcast. If you're not a member of Team Ordinary, head on over to teamordinary.com, get yourself signed up, get yourself added to the team. You get the shirt, the hat, the bio page, the athlete profile there as well. And I don't know, I think it's pretty good value myself. Anyway, moving on. The city of Geneva, that's where Ironman Musselman is. Geneva, not Switzerland, Geneva, New York. It's about a 4-hour drive for us. It was, I went with Stephanie, my wife, and my 2-year-old daughter, Ellie. Fairly well behaved, I might add. She did throw up on the car ride home, but other than that, I mean, that's not really her fault, so I can't blame her for that. One outburst in a restaurant, one psychotic outburst in a restaurant that basically cleared all the indoor seating, but other than that, she was well behaved. I do have to say, the city of Geneva. So we rode up there, we drove up there, and the GPS took us through like sort of this back area where there's a lot of farms, and it just looked like we're out in the middle of nowhere. And then all of a sudden, this little gem of a little vacation area, resort town shows up, and man, it was beautiful. The lakes there were beautiful and really awesome to kind of hang out there. The restaurants, we found some really nice restaurants and had a great time. I would certainly go back to Geneva. I want to thank the volunteers there. I don't know how Ironman does it, but I tell you, the volunteers at these events, there are tons of them, and they are incredible. They all, if they don't know the answer to your question, they typically know where to go to get it. And man, I tell you, when you think about a rainy Sunday afternoon, and people sitting there manning aid stations for you, handing out Gatorade and water, dutifully with a smile on their face, instead of where, they could be indoors sitting in front of the TV, watching a game or something, who knows, watching a movie, watching Netflix, but instead they're out there helping. Man, I thank all you volunteers. There's no, and I think every person who participates in these races would agree. There's no amount of thanks that we can give that adequately relays our thankfulness, our true thankfulness for the things that you guys do to make it easier for us to compete in these nutty races, these nutty events. 70.3 is no joke. It's a long day, especially for me. So thank you to all the volunteers. I needed to say that. I did see a couple people out there, a couple people I recognize. Zach Boyven had reached out to me. I ride with him on Zwift. We haven't actually been able to circle up the last few months on Zwift, but he reached out to me and said he was going to be there. Unfortunately, we weren't able to meet. But I just wanted to mention him. Paul Fastini, I almost ran over his family in the parking lot. We were staying at the same hotel. Paul is a patron, one of our patrons over at patreon.com/ordinarymarathoner, supporter of the podcast. I thank you for that, Paul. But we were coming in from dinner one night, and his family had just parked, and they were getting out of the car, and I was like, this is the last spot in the front, so I was going to take it. And almost ran over his family. And then when I think he noticed the Team Ordinary sticker, and he was like, Scott, is that you? Yeah. It was just sort of a crazy meeting. But congratulations, Paul. Paul got the race done. Did a good job out there. I heard you hit the med tent for a little bit, but I hope you're all right. I hope things are good. And congratulations, Paul. Anthony Park, a local guy here. I've ridden with him on Zwift a few times, met him a couple times. He's one of these guys where I see him on Facebook all the time, but when I see him in person, I don't put the real face to the Facebook face, and I never recognize him. But I did recognize him out there after he finished. He finished third in his age group. He podiumed a little over 4 hours, I believe his time was, something like that. He's just incredibly fast. Congratulations, Anthony. And it was good to see him out there. Even after finishing, he was out there cheering people on. I met him after my race. I wish we could have hung out more. Anthony would have been pretty cool, but we had to kind of run. My friends Jim and Joe, Jim Simcoe, Joe Bartlett, their wives Karen and Michelle. This has become like a little bit of a family event. It's like we go to these races. I go with Jim and Joe a lot and their wives, and I feel like I've known you guys forever at this point. We started doing this in 2017 when I did my first Ironman in Lake Placid. We have a common friend, my friend Paul, his wife Miranda. I went to college with Paul. Paul actually came up. He drove an hour up just to kind of hang out with us and have dinner with us after the race. I think that's awesome that you drove all that way just to see us after the race too, Paul. But man, these guys, I tell you, I feel like I've known them forever, and racing with them is always fun. I always learn a lot, and man, so supportive, these guys. And I wouldn't, not that I couldn't do it without you guys, but I wouldn't want to do it without you guys at this point. It's become sort of a family, I think, and it's awesome. And then Mary Jo Lefevre, she's a member of our discussion group over at Facebook, over at Ordinary Marathoners, plural, that discussion group. And I hadn't circled up with Mary. I didn't know that she was doing it, but she did. She finished her first 70.3 this weekend at Musselman. Congratulations, Mary Jo, on getting that done. I think that's awesome. Got to go for the big one now. All right. I know, without further ado, that's kind of like the intro portion. I do want to talk about the race. Now, obviously, we did the podcast last week. I didn't, you know what? And I spent a lot of time and thought about the podcast from last week. Because, I finished a race and people posted about it on Facebook, and some people reached out to me and said, I didn't even know you're racing. It was like, yeah, I kind of kept it to myself. And from last week that I didn't really feel all that ready. I did embrace this race as something that I loved, and I was just focused on trying to just destroy this race. I came in overweight. I felt undertrained. I wasn't untrained, but I was certainly undertrained. There's something about these races when it gets to like a half marathon and beyond, really kind of over that half marathon. I think anything over, for me, and this can be different for everybody, so please don't take this the wrong way. Anything over a half marathon, I feel like at this point, I can sort of learn how to fake a half marathon, almost untrained. It would probably hurt if I went in completely untrained, but I could probably fake my way through it. I think anything else beyond that really needs respect. And I didn't feel as though I respected this race as much as it deserved and needed. I didn't run enough. I probably trained for the swim. I did the bare minimum, just enough to kind of get used to the water and make sure that my swim stroke was still there, and I didn't feel completely uncomfortable in the water. And I did a lot of training on the bike. This is true, but the other thing, the fourth factor, was my weight, and my weight has gone up dramatically over the last 2 years. It's up. It's up 25, 30 pounds, something like that. I think I did Lake Placid 2 years ago at 220, and now I'm about 250. I think it was 249 when I left. And that's just, to me, that is the symbol. That is I know if I sit and focus on my diet and lose the weight, that I am focused on the race. This was just not it. And, I'm lucky that I did train as hard as I did on the bike, because without that extra power, I would have just struggled. I would have struggled mightily on the bike. I probably would not have made it. I probably would not have made the cutoff if I did not work as hard as I did on the bike, and I went in, obviously going in at this weight. So I knew that I didn't pay this race enough attention. And knowing that, I think, it snowballed into some other things that I didn't pay enough attention to. And that's why, I think going into it, knowing that I didn't respect the race as much, and I, what the thing is too, is I respect the sport. And so going in undertrained and not ready, not in prime shape, and it just feels like I'm doing a disservice to the sport. And I don't want to be able. If I don't put any work in, I don't want to be able to complete a race. I don't want people to think that I can fake a half Ironman. It's a half Ironman. It's no joke. It is a monster. It is for me, a close to 8-hour event. And to not pay it the respect that it really needs, I felt like I just wasn't proud of the work that I did to set myself up for this race. And that's why I didn't, if you guys probably, if you listen to the podcast, you know that I didn't really put it out there. I did the podcast, the pre-podcast for the race, and I didn't post it to Facebook. I didn't post it to our Twitter. I just kind of like let it go. And if you follow the podcast, you saw it. But if you don't, you might have missed it. And that's why people didn't even know I was racing. So, there were little things that were just signs of that I didn't respect this race. I'll tell you a few of them. One was at registration, we had to show a little QR code on our active account. I didn't even know it was there. I don't read the emails. I get I looked at my last, few months from Ironman Musselman emails, and I probably got a dozen of them. And I don't think I opened one of them, maybe one of them when I saw that there was a change to the run course. But other than that, I didn't even open the email to see what I needed. And then when I did open, you had to scroll down, you had to click a link, you had to go into your active account, which I forgot my password because it's on my computer and it's stored on the computer. So I had to reset my password, all this stuff. And I'm thinking, man, I just was unprepared. And there's a couple other things too, a couple other signs of me being unprepared. We'll get to that when I talk about the race itself. My one complaint about the race was if I had one, it's similar to Des Moines. The parking was atrocious. It was really far away. We were lucky enough that Jim and Joe's wives came with us in the morning, and we were able to drop us off a little bit closer. But still, we walked probably close to a mile. And it's not even so much the walking at that point. Sometimes a little bit the walking, and that, hey, you're going to have a long day anyway. So you don't necessarily need to walk a mile before you get to your actual race. The weather was fine. It was nice. It was cool. So it wasn't like, in Iowa, it was rainy and hot and muggy and horrible. But this was, in the morning, at least it was cool and overcast, and it was kind of a perfect race day. But, the other thing is the time factor, right? I'm always an early person. I like to get there early. I like to get my spot. I like to make sure everything is set out. I like to kind of go through what I have to do in my mind so I don't screw things up later on. So I can go through mentally and go through transition so that when it comes to transition time, I've already done it like 3 or 4 times in my head. I know where everything is, and I can just get out of the water and go and do it, get back from the bike and go and do it and move on. And so to cut time into that is just, we're lucky we got there early enough that it was fine. But still, it was just a little bit, that's really kind of like my only complaint. Honestly, I probably would do this race again. If, it's going to depend on schedules for next year. For one reason, I do think that my friend Joe is going to do it. I think Joe Bartlett will do it again next year, and I might have to do it with him if that's the case. But we'll see. We'll see how things shake out in the coming weeks and months. What else? At this point, kind of being prepared with all your equipment. It's something that I've done 100 times, not 100. All right. So maybe 7 times, but I've done it enough times where I feel comfortable that I know what I need, and the things that I need are there. My fear is always complacency and just like forgetting something ridiculously stupid that you absolutely need, like your bike helmet or your bike shoes or your run shoes or something that you really, really need. And leaving that back in the hotel or something like that. So I do pour over my equipment like 4 or 5 times the night before just to make sure I have everything I need. I do need to come up with some kind of checklist just to make sure. I think that would be advantageous for everybody. But I think everyone kind of needs their own checklist because everyone has like a little bit of different stuff, right? I woke up in the morning. I use Aquaphor. I have a sleeveless wetsuit, so I have to make sure to get all over the place. And I didn't do a great job, honestly, because I had some choppy after the swim. I had some real bad choppiness underneath my arms, like really kind of bad. I don't know what it was. It was just burning aggravation. pain. It was painful. So I probably missed some spots, which was unfortunate, but lesson learned. We got there. I probably got into transition about 5:15, between 5:15, 5:30. They were bringing the first group of swimmers out around 6:15. And, we were looking forward to a good day of racing. And I had a conservative race plan going into this. And I kind of knew what I was up against. All right. Just to kind of recap. I felt like I feel like I'm a decent swimmer. And even though I only probably did the minimum, I thought 45 minutes on the swim was sort of conservative and that would be doable. Transition deliberately, just make sure you get everything done, take a few extra seconds, get out on the bike. And I thought that the bike, with where I thought it was going to be very similar, maybe to Mont Tremblant, where I believe I was like 3.5. But I didn't think, obviously, since from not being in shape, I gave myself about a 15-minute curve. I was like, so I was saying 3:45 for the bike. And then we talked about the run too, my whole 2-minute interval session, right? So my 2-minute intervals, 30 seconds running, 1.5 walking. To give you guys an idea, my run pace when I do those intervals is about 9.5 to 10-minute miles. And my walk pace is around 15 minutes. It kind of averaged out to about 13.5-minute miles when I was on flat ground. That was the plan, 13.5-minute miles. If you got off the bike and you just made the cutoff, you have about 3.5 hours to get that half marathon done. So that works out to about a 14.5-minute pace. So if I approach it with a 13.5-minute, pace, then I'll finish with a little bit time to spare. I felt pretty good about that approach. I felt like it was something I could do, and it was something that would get me to the finish line. That was the approach going in. So, you sit there before the race, guys, and honestly, that's after getting everything ready, and then finding your swim time zone that you have to kind of go self-seed, zipping up and sucking in and zipping up the wetsuit and getting ready. And I tell you, being out of shape, it's not even, there's a mental issue with it too, because, you are self-conscious about it. I have a picture of myself from Ironman Maryland getting out of the water that I was like, I couldn't even believe it was me. I was like, wow, that guy looks like he's in shape. Well, I'll tell you what, the guy that showed up at Ironman Musselman did not look like he was in shape. And looking back at the pictures, one of those things, you guys have races where you look at the pictures, you're like, wow, I look pretty good. And then you have races, you look at the pictures and you're like, yeah, we're not going to buy those. We're going to leave those to the side. That was the case for me on Sunday for sure. So, a little self-consciousness, but there's a task at hand that you have to do, right? There's a task at hand. It involves getting in the water and swimming. And a lot of people are going in the water to get a little bit warmed up. I wasn't feeling that. I didn't do that. I felt like it was a little, it wasn't freezing cold. The water was 71, which was fine. The outdoors was probably low 60s. And I definitely saw some people who went in the water and then kind of regretted it after because they were shivering a little bit, waiting to get in. So the gun went off and Joe and I seated, Jim sees it. Jim's a fast swimmer. He goes way up. Joe and I seat ourselves back around the 50-minute slot. I would rather have to pass some people and have all the action in front of me than to get passed over by a whole bunch of people. That's sort of my theory when it came to that. It turned out I actually seated myself perfectly. But we'll get to that in a second. Entering the water was, we got there at 5 a.m. and we started walking to transition. We looked out to the water and it looked like glass. It was very little chop, very calm water. Between that 5 o'clock and sort of, I would say 7 o'clock time where I actually got in the water, there was some afternoon storms coming in. It wasn't really windy, but the chop in the water had certainly picked up, and it wasn't vicious. It wasn't viciously choppy. It shouldn't, it's nothing like they had to contemplate not doing the swim or anything like that. But it was significant enough that you could feel it when you were out there, and you could feel like you were swimming. The chop was coming in. So, and I tell you, that is one other thing to mention. When I was in Iowa, the swim was in kind of like a pond, and it was just basically like you did a big loop around the pond practically. And it was not intimidating. The distance was not intimidating looking at all from the shore. At Musselman, it was different. It was a straight out and then a straight back. So you just look as far as you can see and you're like, wow, there's still buoys all the way out there. And I think when I must have I counted like 6 or 7 buoys. It turned out to be like 8 or 9, which was terrible because the buoys have numbers on them. And in my brain, I was telling myself when I got to buoy 6, I was telling myself, all right, you're almost there. But there were much more to go. Anyway, I looked at the chop and I said to myself, man, like I have to have like a good frame of mind for this. And I wanted to attack the swim. I wanted to say to myself, all right, the water's choppy. I haven't really been in open water, but man up and get in there and just attack the swim. You know you can swim. You know you can finish it. Just go out and do it. And I know at this point too, I know to expect that in the first 100 yards, you have to acclimate to the wetsuit. Sometimes your body doesn't, the wetsuit kind of sticks to your chest and it kind of constricts it a little bit, so your breathing is affected. And you have to kind of just work your way into swim mode and get into that zone where you can just sort of, in years past in Lake Placid and other races, I get into the zone where I can almost just, my brain just gets into, I think ahead to transition. I think ahead to being on the bike. Sometimes I lose my thought and I just kind of daydream, but I'm swimming and I'm swimming at a constant, in a constant form, hopefully holding my good form. Sometimes I have to remind myself to do certain things. But I'm kind of in a good swim mode. I zone out and I get into swim mode. And I have to find that. I have to find that mode as quickly as possible in the beginning in order to have a good swim. That's my theory. That's my approach, we'll say. So I have this frame of mind and the thing beeps and I go through and I hit the water and I get in there and I'm feeling okay, and all of a sudden, you feel the constriction. All right, I know that. I know that's going to happen. You feel the constriction of the wetsuit. You're kind of swimming. You're feeling kind of awkward, but you just kind of plow through those first 100 yards. And I'm feeling a little bit of the current, and it's one of those where your arm comes down to get in the water, and there's no water, and you have to kind of like, just keep doing it as best you can. You just have to keep swimming. You got to just it's Dory from Finding Nemo, right? Just keep swimming. But it was tough. I tell you, it was tougher than I thought it was going to be. And I wasn't holding my swim form very well. And honestly, that entire swim, I never got into the zone. Not once did I feel like I could zone out in my brain. I was eyeing up the yellow buoys on the way out, so you had to keep the yellow buoys on the way out, orange buoys on the way in. And I was about 200 yards into the swim, and there was a kayak there, and the kayak was swimming, was paddling in to get to someone. At the beginning of the swim is kind of like, I think some people have some oh my God moments. They have, either they haven't been practicing open water or they weren't kind of expecting whatever kind of reaction. Maybe they're nervous from the race day. And you see a lot of people kind of reaching for the first buoy or the first kayak or whatever it is. This guy came over and he put a float out, and the float went right near my arm. And I have never once even contemplated ever in the swim of grabbing onto a kayak or grabbing onto a boat or a buoy or anything. I have never had that issue. I was so flustered by the current, and I went from being psyched and aggressive to like not even wanting to be there and thinking maybe I should just call it. Maybe I should just say, all right, enough's enough. This early in the race. And I was thinking, and for that brief instant, the float went by me and I let it go, and I just said, all right, we just got to just keep plugging away, just keep swimming and see how it is over the next 100 yards. And so I did. And it wasn't any better. And it never got better. I expected it to get better as we turned and started heading back to shore. And I think I just was so exhausted from swimming into the current that I just never felt right in the swim. Not once, not one moment. I just kept going. And it's different than the bike or the run, right? The bike and the run, it's kind of easy to take a break because you just kind of walk over and you stand there and you kind of can, put your hands on your knees or whatever for the run, or you can kind of just stop at an aid station, or even if you need to stop on the bike, you can kind of just put your foot on the ground for a little while if you really, really need to. But the swim is different because unless there's a kayak there or something right there, like, and I know some people turn on their back and back. There's plenty of them out there. Plenty of people go into a breaststroke, which is really annoying, by the way. If you're just freestyling and the person in front of you breaks into the breaststroke and all of a sudden those feet go wide, and it happened to me a couple times on Sunday. Those feet go wide and suddenly you're trying not to get kicked. That's frustrating and annoying. I understand that people do it and they need to do it. It is frustrating and annoying. And it happened to me a couple times. But I never got comfortable in that swim. There was seaweed out there, a bunch of I got like noosed by a seaweed at one point. I had to like kind of stop and take it off my neck. On the way out, the yellow buoys were easy to see. On the way back, you had the yellow buoys and you had kind of like the lake background, so there was nothing there, and you could easily see all the buoys all the way out to the red, which was the final buoy where you have to turn around. Coming back, I could not sight those orange buoys for anything. I didn't see them. I couldn't do it. I just didn't see it. I didn't know where I was going. I was just kind of following the other swimmers. At one point, I veered sharply left, and a kayak actually had to reel me back in. And eventually, I gave up totally trying to find the orange buoys, and I just looked at the tents. You could see the tent from Ironman Village all the way on shore, and I just sighted those and went for those. You can't really see it on my Garmin. You can see a couple times where I kind of point left a little bit, and I did like little jagged moves to the left. There's maybe two of them. And I just never know how accurate that Garmin is. But anyway, I struggled in the swim. I struggled more than I thought I would. The water itself, I mean, other than the chop, it was clear. You could see your hand. You could see feet in front of you for the most part. It was pretty clear. It was clearer than I expected. Not quite Mirror Lake, but pretty close. And, swimming eventually, I got in, and I got to tell you, I didn't feel like I ever got into a groove. I went to go look at my watch. I figured I was going to be over 50 minutes, and to see 48 minutes on the watch, it was actually comforting. It was comforting that, all right, I knew I was kind of aiming for 45, but it came in at 48. And, given that I never got comfortable, I never felt good in the water, I'll take it. So at that point, I get out of the water. I saw Jim and Joe's wives, Karen and Michelle. I saw them. They told me how the guys did. They did pretty good in the swim, and we moved on to the bike. I was super deliberate in the in transition, like I planned. This was part of the plan, right? Just make sure you get everything done. I had to go to the bathroom, so I used the restroom. By the way, it's very slippery in the porta potty if you're wearing bike shoes. By the way, I don't know what I recommend. I think I still would wear them because the alternative was either to go in barefoot from the swim, also not a good idea, pretty gross, or put on my run shoes and then go to the bathroom and then come back and put on no, that's not going to happen either. So, but man, it's slippery in there. Anyway, it's about a quarter-mile walk to the bike, and I walked it hard. I wasn't going to run. I didn't want to kind of deplete myself. I wanted to, again, be deliberate, make sure I didn't forget anything, make sure I got all my stuff. And I did that fine. I transitioned in about 10 minutes, which I know is kind of slow, but I'll take it. I'll take it. I wasn't gonna try to go too hard and either forget something or not be prepared on the bike. Now, one of the things, and going back to being unprepared, and one of the things that I forgot, and I meant to do this, was I had removed the bottle cage that I usually keep. I have a bottle cage in my aero bars. And I've been using that the last few races, and I stopped liking it because the bottles tend to slip out, especially if they're a little wet and there's condensation. The bottles tend to slip out, and it was potentially going to rain, so I didn't even want to bother having it, so I removed it. And I was just using the water bottle cage on the bike. And, it seemed like a fine idea, and I meant to get a bottle of water to throw in there, and I forgot. I did have a 12-ounce Poland Spring. I put it on the aero bars, and when I came in from the swim, I slugged it, about half of it. I didn't want to drink too much too quick, and then I was out. And honestly, that was not smart. I should have had some water on the bike. I definitely, right around mile 9, 10, before the first aid station, I felt like I needed it. I felt like I would have wanted it. And it wasn't there. So it's not good to have, it's not good to want something and have something there and have it not be there when it's just a matter of forgetting and remembering. And I just forgot. Bad move. But I did get on the bike, got out there, and, it was what it was. It takes a few minutes for me to get reacclimated, from the swim to kind of transition into bike mode. So the first 5 miles I kind of took easy. The next 10 to 15 was, it was okay. It was, I definitely noticed that going uphill, at my current weight was a detriment. it was a detriment, and I had to go into low gear earlier than I thought. My bike wasn't feeling that great for whatever reason. It just wasn't shifting as cleanly as I would have liked, so it was making me a little bit nervous. But I was getting up the hills and I was doing okay. And someone had passed me and said, oh, I can't wait till mile 22. And I thought, geez, what's going to happen at mile 22? And then realized that I hadn't looked at the course map for the bike in probably a year. And in my brain, the only thing I could see was the course map from Des Moines when we were in Des Moines. And I just totally forgot what the course map looked like. Big mistake. Now, Joe Bartlett had told me before the race, he said, listen, at some point you're going to do about a 5 or 6 mile climb. It's all uphill, but it's not too steep. It's all manageable. And for me, manageable is like 2 or 3% grade. It's not too bad. But you know what? Going out there, and hitting mile 22, which is exactly where it started, it felt to me like it was from mile 22 to 30. And some of the hills were more challenging than I was expecting. There was no relief. There was no downhill. It was all climb for about, I would say, probably 7 or 8 miles. And I was not prepared to handle that. And I mean, I think I handled it fine for what it was, but I wish I would have just taken a little bit of time to pay attention to the course and to train a little bit for the course instead of just kind of not doing that. And dumb. That's dumb. That's, you know, again, that's part of the unpreparedness of not respecting the race like I should have. And it's on me. 100% on me. Miles 22 to 30 was very uncomfortable and very tough and very hard and difficult for me. Miles 30 to 40 were wonderful. They were mostly downhill. I was able to push myself. I felt pretty good. You know, my training rides, I had only done about 22, 23 miles max. So this was all new territory. And I tell you, I've realized some things too when I was out there, which is somewhere around that time, around an hour to an hour and a half into my rides, my legs change and get into this mode where it's like it's uncomfortable. Duh. Well, that's what racing is. It's not supposed to be easy, but they start to get uncomfortable. And a lot of times in training, I don't push through that moment. I don't test myself. And how am I supposed to get better if you don't get into those areas when you push yourself and extend yourself? And that's on me. That's bad training. It's just bad training. And it's things that you take note of and you need to fix going forward. But you know, the bike was the bike, and the bike, it was fun. The course had some spots on it where the roads were really, really rough. And there was one road in particular, it wasn't very long, but it was really, really choppy. They had signs all over the place warning you. At one point, someone was passing me and it kind of forced me into this little gravelly area that I thought was a little dangerous. But I was kind of able to hold myself up. I heard of a few accidents out there. I hope everyone is okay. One of them in particular I heard was pretty bad. In an area of the course where there was a severe downhill, and then across an intersection. The intersection was kind of a bump. By the time I got there, there was someone sitting in front of the bump, making sure people didn't go over it and telling people to slow down, which was smart. But I heard in the beginning of the race that someone may have taken a big spill there. But I made it. I made it through the 56 miles in 3 hours and I think 52 minutes, something like that. 3 hours and 50 minutes. And I got to tell you, initially I was disappointed. I was disappointed because I felt like I could do a little bit better. I felt like I was going to be stronger on the bike. I wanted to improve. But with the challenge, you know, after some time and thinking about it, and A, the not being prepared, B, being overweight, I'm going to be happy with that time. I think it was right around 350, a little bit over. Even though I was kind of eyeing 345, I'm going to be happy with that time. You know, again, the goal for this race was to finish. That was the A goal, just to finish. And eventually we did get there. So I can't really complain. You take what it is, you take the results, you take the experience, you learn from it, and then you make changes going forward. I got into transition, and transition was super cool because Matt Shore was there with his orange volunteer shirt. So I said hello, gave him a big hug. The other few people, I saw my wife. I walked over to the fence, gave my wife a kiss. Saw my daughter, my 2-year-old. She was having a good time. And then the other person that I saw there, unfortunately, was Joe Bartlett. Joe had tweaked his back in the morning when he was getting himself ready. We're getting old. This is just what happens. And on any day, this stupid little thing could happen. He reached over to do something with his setup. And he said, I tweaked my back. And then as we were standing on line for the swim, he's like, I hope my back holds out. It's not feeling good. And then when he got off the bike, he tried to go do the run and he just couldn't do it. He was like Quasimodo out there. And I saw him walking after the day. And I know Joe would have done anything to get out there if he could have to finish that run. And we all wish he could have done it, but it's probably smart after seeing him walk around after the race, probably smart for him to call it a day. And so, he's got a little bit of revenge on his mind, which is why I think he's going to go back next year and why I may go back as well if he's going to go back. But I think it was smart for him to pull the plug at that point. And also, this means that this past Sunday was the first time I ever beat Joe Bartlett in an Ironman race. Woohoo! That's right, Joe. How you like me now? Who's your daddy? Anyway, I do feel bad for Joe, but he's going to be fine. He'll be back at it, and I'm sure he'll take this as a moment to go and get his revenge at some point. And I'm sure we'll see him out there doing it again next year for sure. But I got out of transition in 5 minutes, even with kissing the wife and seeing Matt and seeing Joe and hearing that I got ready to go out on the run, and I felt okay. I was actually shocked. I think Matt was there primarily, A, to say hello, but B, to primarily make sure that I didn't quit at that time and got my butt out on the run. And I did in 5 minutes, which is pretty good transition time for me. Got out on the run, and I made sure to hit exactly what I wanted to do. 30 seconds run, a minute and a half walk. That was the interval. Now, the plan was, it's a 2-minute interval. And if I feel good, I can run a little longer than 30 seconds. And if I feel bad, or if I'm going up a hill, I can run less. And the crowd was there in the beginning, and I ran that first interval, and I did a little bit longer than my 30 seconds. I probably did about a minute and 15. Then I started walking. I didn't want to be that guy that just starts running and walking so quickly. But I tell you what, man, this interval plan, this got me to the finish, because my training run, my longest training run, if you remember, was 6 miles. I mean, I had done 11 miles back in March, but then after that, nothing until 6 miles, just like the weekend before. And even that was more of an exploratory run to try to find the proper interval that could get me to the finish without destroying me. And that's when we came up with this little 2-minute plan, the 30-second run, minute and a half walk. And, in the beginning, my legs were certainly taxed from the bike. I tell you what, another frustrating thing was that because of the parking situation where the parking was, the people who were fast and were already finished, they were already getting their bikes out of transition and walking them back to their cars. So you're going down the run path and they're like 3 or 4 wide. Now, granted, they're all supportive and they're cheering you on, and it felt really good that they were there. But I felt like the race organizers kind of missed. There was like a missed thing there where they don't belong on the run course. And if they were running the run course and you were in their way, they wouldn't have, they would be complaining about it. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it was there, and it was a little annoying, but I did appreciate that most of them, and most all the people that are typically in tryout, they were cheering us on, and pushing us on. If that part felt good, but it's a little bit, you're out there and you're like, man, I'm out there just starting my run, and these guys are done. Like, they're done for the day. It's frustrating. Anyway, so I just put my plan into motion. And, after about a mile and a half, I'm feeling pretty good. The way the course was laid out, it was about a mile this way and then a mile back to transition. Then you pass transition, you go up about 3 miles to a school, up a giant, ridiculous hill, and then you come back, and then you do that twice. So coming back, I started feeling pretty good. I saw the family as I went through, and the people I know. I saw Jim out there, and I said hello. There were some folks that I met on the bike because we kept passing each other, and I saw them out there. We always said hello. People were smiling, having fun. The crowd was great. They were out there, and I just kept monitoring my time and doing my intervals and feeling pretty good. Right around mile 3, my foot got really numb, and when this happens to me, and it happens quite often, the fear is like I can't feel my foot, and it's just kind of going, right? And the fear is that if it lands wrong or it doesn't react properly, I'm going to roll my ankle and potentially injure myself. And that's like the worst feeling. And I was like worrying about it getting worse as I went along. And luckily somewhere, between mile 3 and mile 5, it just disappeared and went away. Thank God. And the funny thing is, as I was going along and as the bike legs, right, my bike legs, all those muscles are kind of like disengaging a little bit, and they're very subtle differences, but there are differences. And the run muscles are starting to engage. I'm actually feeling better with this interval, doing this interval thing. I'm feeling better as the miles go by, and I'm thinking, man, like, I might even be able to do pretty good on the second half of this race. But I stuck with I didn't want to, I wanted to finish, and I didn't want to blow my chance of finishing by bonking or hitting the wall. The hill, when I hit the hill, and I couldn't believe how steep this hill was. It was really no place for a run course, but it was there, and you had to deal with it. So I decided I was going to walk up the hill, and you threw the intervals away, and I just walked up the hill. I think it took me 4 minutes or 6 minutes, whatever it was. And then when I ran downhill, instead of running for 30 seconds, I ran for longer. I ran for a minute or a minute and a half. And I tried my best not to put a lot of weight into my steps so that I was fatiguing my body for the long haul and fatiguing the legs for the long haul. But I got out there and I finished that first loop and I felt pretty good. And I went out in the second, the rain started coming. And I tell you, the weather was a blessing because it was, granted, it may have caused some chop in the water in the morning, which is a little bit annoying. But later in the day, I did not have to deal with any heat. There was no heat. It was a perfect weather. Even the rain, for the most part, was so light that it was just refreshing until the very end. It got a little bit heavy. But at that point, you're just being reeled in, right? So I'm out there dealing with the run and the hill the second time was harder. I remember when I went through transition the first time, I went past transition. You're at the point where you're seeing people run in. It's like you get to the point where people run that way and they're finished and you have to kind of keep going and go back out there for another loop. I was okay and I was happy. I saw the family. I saw Matt. I saw people going by. They were all, people with the bells, people cheering. It's just a really cool environment. And especially the people that stay out there for people like me in the back of the Packers cheering us on. Very appreciated. I thank you guys immensely for doing that. It's such a pick me up, seeing people cheer you on all day. So I went back out. I was feeling good. Went back out there, got up the hill. I got to be honest, on the way back, it was, I saw Jim and Jim's like, how many miles you have left? Jim is great like this. Jim is like, he's the planner. How many miles you have left? And I'm like, I got 4 miles. I'm at mile 9.25. I have about 4 miles to go. He's like, oh, you got an hour and a half to finish. And I'm like, oh, I got this. This is like, and I appreciate that he did that, but it kind of like ticked in my head, like I could walk from here and finish. I'm walking like 15, 16-minute miles. I don't even need the run intervals. I'm going to finish. But I tried my best to kind of, push myself a little bit. The hill was the hill and it was what it was. You can actually see it's funny. You can see my graph on Garmin and you can see the little spikes. It looks like sort of a heart monitor, right? It goes up and down from my pace from running, walking, running, walking, running. And then you can see where the hills are because there's no running. It just, it's walking for a little extra. And then, maybe I'll post a picture on the YouTube if you guys are watching. But anyway, I made my way through. It was raining a little bit harder towards the end. And I felt good about my finish. And I think my time was like 7:52. Honestly, I know it was under 8 hours, which makes me feel good. Maybe 7:53. I don't even know. Coming through that last chute is always so special. The way they set up those Ironman chutes, hitting that carpet just feels so good. It really, there's nothing like it. There is nothing like hitting the red carpet of an Ironman finish, whether it's a 70.3 or a full. It's just that feeling of, it's like just, they reel you in and it's just awesome. And you're like floating on air for those last few, 100 yards or last 100 yards or whatever it may be, 50 yards, whatever it could be. And for me, then crossing the finish line and Matt was volunteering and his wife Val, and they were standing there. Matt put the medal over my head, which was the wrong medal, but we're not going to discuss that here, Matt. And, I got to tell you, it's really cool knowing the person that gives you your medal and having them bring you into the finish line. It adds sort of a little bit of extra specialness to the experience, knowing that person. It happened to me in Lake Placid when Laura Stebbins gave me my medal. Because they understand a little bit more what you've been through. You know, they understand the trip you've taken to get there, and the struggles you've maintained. And, you know, and for me, maybe going into this a little underprepared and I didn't feel exactly right, but going through, hey, the race plan worked to perfection. I don't, you know, I couldn't have had a more perfect day. Everything worked exactly the way it was supposed to work. Even though I made some mistakes here and there, everything worked out perfectly. So the medal Matt gave me was a relay medal, and to his credit, he noticed it right away and he took it off. He said, "Let me get you a real medal." And they went and another volunteer went and handed him another medal. He put it around my neck. We just chatted and I walked away to meet with my family, and it turns out he gave me a relay medal again. They gave me the woman came over. She gave me another relay. She took my relay medal and gave me another relay medal. But whatever, it is what it is. The medal part is still the same. It's just a ribbon that says relay. I'm going to take it. I'm not even going to write the email. I think it's almost a better story, having the relay medal and, than it is otherwise. But, it is a really cool perk to know the person who's bringing you into the shoot and helping you get your chip off. Thank you, Val. It's a dirty job sometimes, not for me, but from other people, from what I understand. And it's definitely has a little layer of specialness to it all. I got out there, I saw Jo and Jim. I feel bad for Jo, man, just not being able to finish. Again, he'll be back. Seeing Jim crushed the race. Anthony Park, I saw there. He kind of showed me the food tent, and man, he was on the podium. That is incredible. But what a day. What a race, what a finish. I afterwards we kind of sat down and had a few beers and just, just absorbed everything that just happened. A whole day, kind of reflect on the things that you did and what you could do better and what you could do worse and ways you could be more prepared. Lots of them. But kind of being in that Ironman environment is just something special. It really is just something special. And, looking at my clients, Mike, who just finished his first 70.3 and Erin, who will finish her first 70.3 next year, I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever. Erin, it's a special experience, and this race is no joke. It is a monster. Sometimes you look at the full and you say, oh, it's only a half because you know what the full could be. The full is a monster. This is also a monster. It is not, there are people, you can go out and race this if you're in good shape. But man, for me, it was a survival exercise, and I survived it, and I survived it with over a half an hour to spare, so I felt pretty good. I came in last in my age group, by the way, dead last. The guy that finished behind me was younger than me. He wasn't dead last in his age group. There was like 3 or 4 people. He was in like the 40 to 45 or 40 to 44, I think. And he was third to last. He finished behind me. I was finished ahead of him. I'm in 45 to 49, and I was dead last. How is that fair? But anyway, listen, I met a bunch of people out on the course. I don't know their names, but man, it was fun to kind of race with you guys. Some of them on the bike, some of them on the run, giving people high fives, cheering people on. There was one woman, she was going this way, and I was going that way. And I said, I'm going to catch you. You better not let me catch you. And I caught her right at the end. I caught her at like mile 12. And we ran together for a little bit, back and forth, just encouraging one another on just to get to the finish, and we both did. So everyone out there who finished that day, and even if you didn't finish and you gave it your all, congratulations, because it's not, it's not always about the medal. It's about the experience and getting out there and challenging yourself. So congratulations to everyone who finished, everyone who went out there and suited up and went for it. What a great day. Thank you again to the city of Geneva and to Ironman for getting that done. The volunteers, again, thank you so much. And for all of you guys, friends and family who just enjoyed the experience with me and shared that with me. It was a fun time. It was a fun time and a great weekend. Thank you for everyone who wrote on Facebook. It's nice to know that even though, I didn't put it out there, you guys were still out there supporting me, and that means a lot to me. It really does. And when I got back out of the race and I opened my phone, which I didn't have on me at the time, but when I finally got it and looked, it's overwhelming. It is overwhelming to kind of go to the group and see what our group has become and seeing all the support and encouragement there. thank you guys for being who you are and supporting one another and creating this community of ordinary marathoners. Who would have ever thought that they would grow to this sort of great thing that we have going? I got a lot of comments on my Team Ordinary Wadi gear, by the way. I know a lot of things going on at Wadi. We're not going to talk about that, but a lot of comments on Team Ordinary and people, encouraging me, saying, "Oh, you're not." That's the most common comment is, "Oh, you're not ordinary," and some people throw in the "you're extraordinary" kind of thing. Some people think it's funny. They think it's like but whatever. It is what it is. It is our group. It is the way we sort of express our solidarity. That hey, no matter where you are in life, you can start training for these things and you can get them done. And a lot of people out there have have been to rock bottom or have been in places, depression, and this is the way they've kind of dealt with it or helped them get out of it and help them feel special again and give them that sense of self, that self-worth that, you can do things that maybe years ago you never ever thought you could do. That is the community that we have built, and whether you are one of those people who are now doing those things regularly, and and you're just trying to show support and solidarity to the people that want to be like that, or whether you're just getting going, you're just getting off the couch. We have all kinds. We have people that race in the front of the pack. We have people that race in the middle. We have people that race in the back. That's who we are, and that's what I love about you guys. All the encouragement, all the support. Thank you. Thank you for who you are. And that's all I got for you today. A great day at at Ironman Musselman in Geneva, New York. I may be back next year. Who knows? We'll see how it goes. Thank you guys again. If you want to support the podcast, patreon.com/ordinary marathoners. Ordinary marathoner, singular. You can get your name on our patron list that comes at about 2 seconds after I let you know that every day is an ordinary day unless you make it extraordinary. So get after it, guys.